The Unitarian Universalist Church of Ventura, California, presents a homily by our minister, the Reverend Dana Worsnop, titled, Let Liberation Be Enough, recorded on Sunday morning, March 28th, 2021.
Good morning and welcome to worship with the Unitarian Universalist Church of Ventura. It is good to be together again, even as it is a virtual gathering. It's been this way for a year now. Our theme for the month of March has been commitment. And this day we celebrate the Jewish holiday of Passover, which began last night at sunset, and which tells the story each year of the Jews' liberation from slavery in Egypt. And so I welcome all who've been here for years as part of this congregation, and any who are here for the very first time. I welcome you all and everybody in between to this community that is committed to liberation. I am the Reverend Dana Worsnop, and it is my honor and deep pleasure to serve this church. I just have two announcements. One is that if you have a pledge card that you have not yet put into the self-addressed stamped envelope that you received this month, please do return those. There are people who really need to know that information, and it'd be easier than trying to catch up with you via phone or email or all the ways that we can. And also just to remind you that the board of trustees of this congregation hosts a happy hour once a month, and it's on Thursday nights, the second Thursday of each month. So, the first Thursday of each month, please join them this Thursday. They talk about all kinds of fun things and want to hear how you're feeling about what's going on in the church. We begin our services with an acknowledgement that the land each of us is on was once the ancestral home of indigenous peoples. In most of Ventura County, this is the Chumash people. So let us breathe and arrive here together on what may be a long journey through the desert, or may be a precipice of liberation. Let us enter sacred space.
Good morning. I'm Worship Associate Celia Ortenberg, and we hope that everyone today has a chalice and something to light it with. Let's all light our chalices together. We began our service this morning with these words from Reverend Deborah Hoffner. It is our journey together. We are on a journey. We didn't plan it. We didn't have time for the bread to rise. We may find ourselves in wilderness, hungry and thirsty, doubting that we should ever have come. But look around. We're not alone. This is our journey together. a journey to our better selves, a journey to a better world, a journey to a more promised land. Come, let us worship together.
Good morning. I'm Carolyn Vierke, the music director, and I'd like to invite you to join me in singing our opening hymn, When Israel Was in Egypt's Land. When Israel was in Egypt's land, let my people go, oppressed so hard they could not stand. Let my people go. Go down, Moses, way down in Egypt's land. Tell old Pharaoh to let my people go. The Lord told Moses what to do. Let my people go. To lead the tribe of Israel through. Let my people go. Go down, Moses, way down in Egypt's land. Tell old Pharaoh to let my people go. For you the cloud shall clear the way. Let my people go. A fire by night, a shade by day. Let my people go. Go down, Moses, way down in Egypt's land. Tell old Pharaoh to let my people go. We need not always weep and moan. Let my people go. And where these slavery chains forlorn, let my people go. Go down, Moses, way down in Egypt's land. Tell old Pharaoh to let my people go.
As the sun set last night, the Jewish holiday season of Passover began. It is the time when Jews retell an ancient story of the liberation of the Israelites from slavery under Pharaoh in Egypt. When they remember the sorrow and pain of slavery and how miraculous it feels to be free. The traditional story that you may have heard in some form comes from the book of Exodus in what Jews call the Torah and Christians call the Bible. I can't remember where I first heard this story that I'm going to tell today. It was written much later than the Torah in the 6th century. And today we will be using some pictures by Jago from a book called Nachshon, Who Was Afraid to Swim. It is a story told at many times and in many ways. The traditional story of the Exodus of Passover, the traditional story begins with the Jewish people as slaves to the great Pharaoh in Egypt, working hard in the hot sun. They were whipped if they didn't work hard enough. And one day, though, the Jewish God comes to a man named Moses and tells him to lead the Israelites to freedom. So Moses goes to Pharaoh and says, "Let my people go." just like in the song we just sang. He asks Pharaoh 10 times. And when Pharaoh says no, the God of the Jews makes some awful things happen. There were frogs and locusts and 3 days when the sun never rose. And finally, after 10 horrible things happened, Pharaoh finally says, just go now. And all the Jews ran away as fast as they could before the bread even had time to rise. But then Pharaoh, who is just annoying as well as powerful, nasty combination. So Pharaoh then decides he changes his mind and he chases after this ragtag group of Israelites. And the fleeing band, he's chasing after them with his horses and chariots, and the fleeing band of Israelites stops short at the shores of a great sea that they cannot cross, and they are stuck. So God tells Moses to command the seas to make way, and the waters part, and the Jews walk on dry land to freedom. Yippee! Yet, Rabbi Adam Greenwald says some Jews really didn't like that story so much because God was doing all the work, which just didn't seem quite right. So they changed it. In this new version, the story goes the same as I've just told it, and the Jews, they are trapped between the vast sea and the Pharaoh's army, and they're stuck in the middle. And Moses lifts his arms and commands the waters to part. But nothing happens. And everyone is really kind of freaked out. Some think that they should just surrender to the Pharaoh and go back to slavery because at least that would be better than drowning. Then, out of the crowd walks a boy named Nachshon, who steps into the water. Now, this totally shocks everyone because they all know that Nachshon is terrified of swimming. He never, ever, ever, ever went swimming with the other kids, even on the hottest and longest days of work. At best, he dangled his toes in the water while everyone else played. And now there's Nachshon walking out into this great sea, and everyone cries out, "What are you doing? Where are you going?" But Nachshon just keeps walking up to his knees, his waist, his chest, up to his neck. The people start to wonder if Nachshon knows something they don't. So they follow him into the water, up to their knees, up to their chest, up to their necks too. And still the water swirls about them. And finally, they get up to their noses. And only then does the sea split wide and the people walk with Nachshon and Moses to the other side. They can't believe their luck. This is surely a miracle. They dance and thank their God and Moses, and of course, Nachshon, the boy who was afraid to swim, who saved them all. That may have been the biggest miracle of all. I do love the way Jewish people tell and retell their stories, always looking for new things about God and about people. And there are always so many ways to tell any story. The story of Nachshon tells us that we have to be committed to liberation, and that freedom can take great courage. We have to be committed to get up to our neck and maybe even up to our nose. It also teaches us that freedom is not just a gift from beyond. It is something that we can choose, that we can do something to make happen. The rabbi writes, in each generation, we are called to step into the breach, to carve a path for future generations. We are called to live in such a way that others will look back and say, because they were brave, because they were committed, there is space for us to follow, and liberation is possible.
What a wonderful story, Dana. Thank you. Each Sunday, this congregation gives away our collection to an organization in the larger community or to funds that help people in our own church. We now invite you to donate online. You'll see the link on the next slide, which will also be posted in the chat as a direct link. Our offering today goes to the 805 UndocuFund to provide financial assistance to the struggling undocumented immigrant families of Ventura County. Undocumented immigrants predominantly work in the sectors that have been hard hit by the pandemic, including service and hospitality, restaurants, child and elder care, day labor, and agriculture. And so many have lost significant work hours or their jobs altogether during the pandemic-driven economic crisis. They're not eligible for unemployment or most government assistance. The fund has received more than 7,000 applications for assistance. Director Gayona Maquedo says that at the moment, the fund can only serve a fraction of the households who have applied. These families are suffering, he said. They don't have enough money to pay their rent, to buy food, or to purchase internet for their children to go to school. One recent applicant said, I've been out of a job for many weeks. There's no jobs out here. We have 3 kids, rent an apartment, and we have to pay for insurance. We don't have income to pay for these bills. We are thankful for any assistance in maintaining our household during this difficult time. Thank you for giving generously, as you always do.
Dayenu, it would have been enough. Enough. This is a traditional Passover song, a song of gratitude for the abundance of God's grace, goodness, and love. It recounts the story of Passover, and at each step of the story, the response is Dayenu. This This would have been enough. And this too. Dayenu, it would have been enough if only you had sent the frogs and locusts to frighten Pharaoh. Oh yeah. Okay. Dayenu, it would have been enough if there had only been hail and a night that lasted for 3 days. Dayenu, it would have been enough if only we had come to the edge of the sea. Dayenu, it would have been enough only to wander in the desert. Dayenu. Really? Really? It would have been enough. This is a song, of course, that could only be sung in retrospect, once the people had actually arrived in the promised land, and so they knew the whole story. This mighty God had helped at each step, although did not make it very easy. Was this God testing the Hebrew people to show that they were committed enough for liberation? Perhaps just signaling that liberation is not easy, that it is a process and seemingly never ending. Because first you have to get through the harshest dangers, the ickiest things like the sky raining frogs and grasshoppers, the fearsome things like never ending light. And yes, I am leaving out all the gory parts because there were several of those too. So first you have to get through those dangers, and then sometimes the moment just arises after the waiting, and you have to leave now, carrying what you can on your back, your food half cooked, just get out. And then sometimes the water parts in an instant and the path becomes clear. But the second half of the Passover story is after this huge miracle, after the seas part and the Israelites escape Pharaoh. After all of that, then they wander for 40 years in the desert. Seriously. You are finally free, but here you have to wander in a desert for a really long time. Sometimes you do get to the mountaintop, yet you know that not everyone will be able to enter the promised land with you. Dayenu? Dayenu. What is enough anyway? What would be enough? Enough is a fuzzy idea for humans who seemingly always want more. The path of liberation does ask us to celebrate as we can, to be thankful with each danger past, and to keep moving forward. Who knows when or if we will ever reach the promised land? What does the promised land even look like? And yet, at each step, we can still say, Dayenu. This would be, this can be enough. This is enough, for we are here now. We are not alone. We are on this journey together, a journey to a fuller self, a peaceful world, and a more promised land. Dayenu.
Each week, we lift up the joys and sorrows that have been shared with our community. There are two ways to submit a joy or a sorrow: from a link on the website, uuventura.org, or a link on our Thursday email bulletin, UUCV This Week. When we're together in our physical sanctuary, we drop stones in the water for each joy or sorrow. The ripples that go out remind us that we are all connected. Here in our online sanctuary that we make together today, we see the image of ripples to help us keep that connection. I invite you all now to speak aloud or in your heart the names of those you wish to celebrate or memorialize, or those who may be in need of the loving embrace of this community. We also now invite you to type the names into our Zoom chat. By invoking their names, even when we may not hear them, you bring them into this circle of caring that we call community. We hold these names, spoken or unspoken, in the silent sanctuary of our hearts. May we be truly grateful for all that is our life.
I invite you now into a time of a guided meditation. And so close your eyes if you wish, or simply soften your gaze. Take some moments to notice your breathing. Consider what it is you wish to be free of, and perhaps what it is that is holding you back. Is there a vast sea between you and the freedom you seek? Perhaps there are giant boulders in the way, or perhaps an indecision at the crossing of many roads. Rest here for a bit, beholding the obstacle, making no effort to change it. Now imagine that it is gone. The sea has parted, the rocks dissolved. A bright golden thread travels along the path now clearly marked. Cross the threshold. Step into freedom. You are liberated. There may yet be deserts ahead, but for now, I invite you to step into a land of peace and justice, kindness and abundance for all. Where are you? Look about you. What do you see? Are you in nature, a vast open field, a mountain valley? Are you in the city with people bustling about you? Is anyone with you? What does this freedom feel like? Look about you one last time so that you can remember this place. Know that you can always return, for this is a place that is inside of you. Breathe and return your attention again to your present surroundings. Breathe into this place. Gently open your eyes. Refocus your gaze. Carry with you this image of liberation and know that it is with you always. May it be so.
Our reading this morning is from Reverend Rebecca Parker. Let us covenant with one another to keep faith with the source of life, knowing that we are not our own. Earth made us. Let us covenant with one another to keep faith with a community of resistance, never to forget that life can be saved from that which threatens it, by people choosing to put into practice an alternative way of life. And let us covenant with one another to seek for an ever deeper awareness of that which springs up inwardly in us. Even when our hearts are broken by our own failures, by failures of others cutting into our lives, even when we have done all we can and life is still broken, there is a universal love that has never broken faith with us and never will. This is the ground of our hope and the reason we can be bold in seeking to fulfill the promise.
I stand at the sea and turn to face the desert stretching endless and steep.
Clearly a song performed, sung in pre-COVID time. Let that applause be ours as well. On its surface, the story of the Exodus doesn't make much more sense than Dayenu. If there were a literal God with the power attributed to this God, that God could have freed the people immediately without not even making them wander in that desert for 40 years. Seriously, this is ridiculous on a certain level. And yet, let us not be so serious or literal. The whole Torah is metaphor and mystery. Liberation, it tells us, is complicated. It asks so much of us. It asks of us our time, our commitment, and more than a little faith. It asks us to be incredibly patient and to be ready to leave at a moment's notice. I do so love the Jewish practice of midrash, which is taking a story and telling it over and over from different perspectives, wondering how it might have been different. Yes, the Jews were the first people to write down scripture. I may not have that wrong, I may have that wrong, but this is a pretty big scripture and it was among the first written down. And yet they knew not to stop. And so they have been commenting and speculating on these stories ever since they were first told and retold, then written down and told and retold again. If the Midrash of Nachshon tells us we have agency in our own liberation, in the liberation of others, what does that mean now for all of us today? Those of us who are still afraid to swim, who are afraid of how the liberation of all will change the world, change our lives. Even if the Israelites sometimes wondered if slavery was better than the endless journey in the desert. Countless sages have told us that we are all tied up in one another's liberation. None of us is free until all of us is free. All of us are free. All of us need all of us to make it. On a deeper level, the deepest truth is that none of us are completely free. We all live under and in systems of oppression. All our minds have been colonized in some way. It is impossible to live in our culture without internalizing racism and patriarchy. It's the water we swim in, the air we breathe. As a white person, I benefit in ways, many still unconscious. I benefit from white supremacist culture. And yet racism damages my soul too, because it breaks our human covenant. It runs counter to the love that holds us all. It makes me feel smaller and less than. It hurts those relationships. It hurts my connections to others. It even hurts my connection to the earth. And as a woman, I can feel the oppression of patriarchy, yet it too has taken up residence in my brain, in the ways I judge myself, other women and men, in how I view the possibilities before me, in how I view what it means to be feminine. And though men do benefit in ways also from patriarchy, many still unconscious, patriarchy harms men also. How many messages does this culture give us all about how to be a man, how to man up? What cost is there for not living up to that image? I do still note the blank and sometimes terrified looks I get from men when I ask them to join me in dismantling the patriarchy. I do get it, guys. I really, really get it. And yet I know that what I am really asking you is to help free yourselves and me from this form of oppression, which is actually keeping you from your fullest selves. It is keeping us all from being our fullest selves. For we all need to be liberated from something. And what a relief it is when the prison door swings open. And yet that door needs to open for us all, or our own liberation is incomplete. We all need to be liberated. And yet liberation is a process. Can we let each new liberatory revelation be enough at least in that moment? Can we celebrate it? The song we heard just before this homily was called Miriam's Song. It's essentially another midrash on what is, scholars think, the oldest extant passage that is in the Torah, in the entire Bible, that so many people use as their holy sacred text. It is a song of celebration, of praise of God, of the possibilities before us, yet it is also a song sung on the edge of a desert, of an unknown destination, of carrying forward. It is a song in the middle of the process of liberation. So what if we celebrate even in the middle? What if it is, okay, I got past those grasshoppers. Let me rest for a little bit so that soon I can ask what next. And okay, those waters parted. It was a miracle. Sweet, merciful heavens. Yay. Oh yeah, and now there's a desert and I have to find my way through that too, because liberation isn't easy. It asks a lot of me. I have to stay committed. Part of this journey means also, this is a key point, part of this journey means coming to see that the liberation of others doesn't diminish any of my own liberation. It means coming to see that we all gain when one among us is liberated, when one among us is liberated, when thousands among us are liberated, we all gain, because liberation is not the zero-sum game that colonization, that white supremacy, that patriarchy tells us all that it is, that if I don't have all I need. If you get some of it, then we all have less, that there's only a certain amount of liberation available. Doesn't see that somehow liberation is an exponential equation, a geometric progression. We need to be liberated from that mindset too. And yes, a liberated world will change a lot. I may have to give up some treasured assumptions. And yet, what will I do when the seas part, the sun shines, and I step on to solid, holy ground once more, understanding a new truth that is so much greater, so much more beautiful than those assumptions that I had ever let me imagine before? We all grow. We all gain through liberation. Liberation of one is liberation for all. And without liberation for all, none of us are free. We all grow, we all gain from liberation. Keep your eyes on that prize. May we all be liberated, little by little, and in great sudden leaps, diving off the cliff into the sweet waters. And may liberation be enough. May it be so. Please join me in prayer. Holy beingness, powerful and powerless, spirit of liberation, change, and possibility, spirit of life which dwells within and among and beyond us this day and always. May we be willing to be truly free. May we seek freedom for all, knowing that each of us can only be free when all are free. May we bring forth our broken hearts to bear witness to lives oppressed, lives diminished, lives traumatized, lives lost to gun violence, to pandemic, to assaults on democracy. May we find the courage to love even in the face of our own failure and the failure of others. May we deepen and widen our commitment to freedom for all. May we find the strength to change and grow, to see new truths, and let our lives be carried by them. May we never, ever forget that we are in this together, and that somehow we are all carried together by a love that never lets us go. May we hear that song in our hearts, singing clearly and brightly to us all. And may all those who are ill find healing. May those who are in despair find hope. May those who are without shelter find home. May all those suffering in conflict and war throughout the world, may they and we know peace. Amen, and blessed be.
Please join me in our closing hymn, Fire of Commitment.
Please join Reverend Dana in extinguishing your chalice at home. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
So after a brief postlude, everyone will be placed into breakout rooms for a virtual coffee hour. You can join your group or opt out at that point. And whether you are new among us or well seasoned in this congregation, I sincerely invite all to come in and share. How do you want to be liberated? And what does liberation mean to you? I leave you with these words adapted from Bishop Desmond Tutu. Liberation is costly, Even after the Lord delivered the Israelites from Egypt, they had to travel through the desert. They had to bear the responsibilities and difficulties of freedom. For liberation is costly. We must hold hands and refuse to be divided. We must be ready. Some of us will not see the day of our liberation, yet they will have contributed to the struggle. So let us be united, filled with hope, and let us hear the song in our heart and sing it till we are the fullness of our humanity is realized, and sing it until all are free. Go forth in peace. Go forth in good health. Go forth in love. Go forth and be free. Let us all make it so.
We hope you've enjoyed Let Liberation Be Enough, presented by the Reverend Dana Worsnop, recorded on March 28, 2021, for the Unitarian Universalist Church of Ventura, California.